Good morning. Let's talk a little bit about literature this morning. Um, the subject is going to be revisions on a novel. If you've never written a novel or you're just a fledgling author and you want to know how much is involved in all of this, I would say that in any novel, that 50% of the time that you're going to spend on that novel is going to be involved in revisions. If it's a much more complex novel and you're making inferences in certain parts to real life stuff, um, your revisions may be 70% of the time you spend on a particular novel. And to do revisions is absolutely vital. I saw a very nice quote yesterday that said, writing a novel without revising is like running outside your house in your underwear. That's true, and it goes back to another piece of advice from the great writer Stephen King, who said, "Your first draft is going to stink. Just count on it. You know, you've come up with this great idea, you've come up with plot line, character interactions, nice little side stories to blend into something. You have written a novel which is up around 85,000 words, which is a standard, fairly thick novel if it's going to go out in print. Um, but yeah, you're going to find as you start going through there, one, there's just the simple editing part of it, misspellings, a missed word, using the incorrect spelling of there. And I don't care how long you've been in journalism, as I have, you will find things. And you will find things on the first time you go through and revise, and the second, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth. It's just so vital, part of it. You will find things within your plot line that you don't care for, or you come up with a better idea. I will use to illustrate this something that I did yesterday. Um, a novel that I'm working on right now is excuse me, and I have an investigator, and someone is talking on the phone to my protagonist and his wife and issuing a warning about this investigator that he might not be as reliable as they think. Um, Originally, I had an idea that this person calling would tip them off. Also, that this investigator has been known to illegally place listening devices within homes or businesses that he is investigating. And I wrote that scenario into my chapter. Well, the more I started thinking about it, I went, okay, yeah, that can work, but what's going to be better? So I went back and I revised and I rewrote the chapter to where no one knew about any listening devices. This person who calls them to warn him gives him all this information on how to look into the background of this investigator, find out that he might not be who or what he says he is as far as an integrity of an investigation. And then afterwards, um, find out, just have a sudden worry, and my protagonist gets down on his knees, uses his little flashlight on his cell phone, and looks under his desk in his office where he has been talking to this person, and he sees a small little nodule, a listening device. And then he leads his wife out there, does something which he rarely does to her, which is to physically reach out and put his finger over her mouth to say, don't say anything. And they go out into the dining room and look under the dining room table. And yes, there's another listening device. And then I'm going to pick up at that point. They're going to start wondering, where are other listening devices in this house? In the living room, in our bedroom. Is there a listening device in our bedroom? And that's, and it's a little side portion of an entire novel. But I felt that to punch up the storyline and this particular scene, it was a move I had to make. And you will find yourself, if you are writing, that you are going to revise scenes often. Sometimes there are just little nuances that you will do. I did plenty of those in One Summer Season, the novel I have out on Smashwords. And that's just the start of the revisions. Here, a few months ago, I saw a very nice little slideshow that someone put out about the various stages of becoming published. And it shows this a writer sitting there and very feverishly tapping away on a keyboard, and worry and angst and going through all the stages of first draft and revision and revision and revision. And then it gets to a point to where he in this case sends out a query letter, and guess what? Literary agent wants to take your project under his or her wing. Yay! Jump around, dance, pop the champagne. Oh, and then here comes the notes from the literary agent. Oh, you need to change this, and this to beef up the story. You're a first-time author. You don't have the chops to be able to look at that literary agent and say, sorry, I like my storyline. So you sit down and you type away at your keyboard again, and you send it all off, and the literary agent is happy, and you're happy, and you're not ready to pop the cork on the champagne yet. But then it goes to a publishing house. A publishing house is interested in your novel. It wants to make both ebook and a print book. So you can go to Barnes & Noble, or your friends can order an ebook online. But guess what? The editor at the publishing house sends back a bunch of suggested changes. Bam, 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 on the keyboard again to do it. And, finally everything is fine. Your book goes out to the public. It's met with, yeah, okay. Yeah, you did okay. You made a fair chunk of change on it. But guess what? Publishing house wants the follow-up to that, and they want it in 9 months. So guess what? Bam, 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 bam. First draft. Stinks. Revise. And you go through the process again and again. One of the good keynote speakers at the Pikes Peak Writers Conference was Jeffrey Deaver, who has 2 protagonists that he uses, and he changes off every year between these 2 protagonists. He's also was the author who was selected to do the new James Bond and novels. And he talked about, oh man, I just got my latest book published, and I'm in the Bahamas, and I'm sitting on the beach, and things are nice, and I'm having a drink as I'm sitting under the shade, and just the soft breezes are bathing me, and it ring, ring, ring. There's your cell phone, and you answer it, and it is your publishing house going, you have 9 months to a year to complete a novel. We're looking at this kind of a time frame for publication. Uh, okay, yeah, you're still going to have a few days in the islands, but you're already starting to feel that writer's angst of, um, okay, yeah, I've had some ideas about a storyline on this, but guess what? It's as soon as you get back home, you're going to go back into your home office or wherever you choose to write, and bam, 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 you're going to start doing things, putting your story down into a computer, revising, sending it off to your publisher, getting suggestions. I do. I don't know how much Jeffrey Deaver has to change parts of his copy. There is another author that I heard speak at the Pikes Peak conference one year named Joe Lansdale. He's an East Texan. He's just a good old boy who writes, the Hap and Leonard series, which is on TV now. That's Joe Lansdale. Cold in July, which was a Showtime movie. That's Joe Lansdale. And someone asked him, what is your feeling of working with an editor who suggests changes in your novels? Well, he dropped a very commonly used profanity and said, they're free to change misspellings, things in syntax, etc. He says, that's my book, that's my storyline, and they do not touch it. I wrote it that way for a reason, and I don't care who you are. You're not touching my book. You aren't going to sit there and try and alter my storyline. Well, most authors, especially if it's your first one, doesn't have that kind of power. I went to Don Moss's writers workshop in Virginia Beach, Virginia, one year, and there was a woman who had been published, and she had a bunch of suggestions coming back from her young editor at the publishing house, and she was falling apart emotionally because she didn't want these changes made, and some of them were valid from someone who has been a copy editor, and there are little things that need to be changed in sentence structure or tightening wording, etc. Yeah, they all had to be done, but they did suggest a couple of areas where she could change her scenario, and she's into a fantasy Native American type of novel, which I would never write, but that's her bailiwick. And boy, but guess what? Some of those revisions would probably happen. I don't know. I haven't talked to her since I left the writers' conference, so I don't know how she made out as far as keeping a literary agent from changing her storyline. So that's the world of revisions. I'm going to go back today. I've already done some writing today, and I'm going to go back and begin building on my story, building that first draft, hopefully not encountering something like the listening device scenario I talked about, where I feel that right now I have to go back and change that in order to improve the story. So that's it. Tomorrow, I may introduce you to some of these things I have on the shelves behind me. There are four things that dominate my life. One is journalism, which is represented by this photo up here. I have sports memorabilia here. I have great literature, and I have family. And we'll talk about part of that tomorrow. I think I'll look at some of my favorite novels, which I have up in this section right over here. So we'll do that tomorrow. Have a good day. Write the hell out of it. I'm going to try and do that. And good luck. Bye bye.